Thank you, Roger. Roger asked me to talk a little bit about my Fridays for Future stuff. But I want to just start by thanking Roger and everybody for being so supportive of this on my journey. And one of the things that I've tried to create in my Fridays for Future group, and people have come and told me this, is like, I feel safe. I feel safe coming here and sharing what I'm feeling about climate change. And it was essentially an echo of what we're doing here, just creating a safe space to be able to share our thoughts and our feelings. So I'm going to share some thoughts and feelings. And I'm going to take a clue from Bryn here. So I wrote this book, and I've been working with Roger and Enneagram for a little over 20 years, but I've been thinking about climate change for over 30 years. And so while I'm writing the book, I'm thinking it's a book about the Enneagram, but it's a book about how the Enneagram can be used to solve big problems. And so what was my mind thinking? It's thinking about climate change as I'm writing the book. So it's kind of the subtext for the whole book is how can humanity come together to solve climate change? And I have this one at the very end. I say, on a global scale, humanity faces ever bigger challenges. Some are natural and some we created. Our perennial problem of access to fresh water and nutritious food are now intensified by climate change. Climate change poses an existential threat to humanity with a looming deadline to which we are seemingly insensitive. By the time we do register the threat and decide to take action, I hope it's not too late. I sincerely believe that the Enneagram problem-solving process will help humanity rally around practical solutions and implement them speedily. So that's kind of how I end the book. And after, I wrote the book, and it was March 2020 when I released the book. We were going into COVID, so all of my book tours were essentially virtual. This is my first time I've actually been in front of people. I've actually read them. So, but then after doing that for about a year, I started coming to the realization I should start doing something about climate change. And I went to a visioning session, and we wrote letters to our future selves about congratulating ourselves of what we're going to be doing in the future. And that's when it all started to come together for me. When I look at climate change through the context of problem solving, I'll just kind of run you through it. The way I see it. So first of all, step one is there's a problem. That's type one, right? Hey, it shouldn't be like that, it should be like this. So here's the problem from a scientific point of view. We are putting carbon pollution into the atmosphere and blanketing the Earth such that heat from the Earth can't go back into space. And we keep just adding and adding to that blanket and making it thicker and thicker. So when I was in college, scientists were in front of Congress saying, we can't let it go over 350 parts per million. Right? And that's why there's even an organization called 350.org, just to commemorate that. When I was born, it was 320. So by the time I was in college, it was already getting at 350. So this orange line here is 350. So how did we do? We just kind of blew right past it. And does it look like we're even slowing down? It looks like it's increasing. It's like madness, right? And then this one here, so this is CO2, this is methane. Methane's 80 times worse than CO2. And we started to slow down a little bit, but now things are picking back up again. And it's just going higher and higher. So it's crazy. So now, what are the consequences of this? Okay, so this is just this week. So Lahaina, right? Completely intensified the fire. Canada is like on fire. The whole country is on fire. In Florida, it got to 100 degrees. It's like a hot tub. I can only be in a hot tub for 5 minutes and I have to get out. But the coral can't get out. So they're just done. We're creating essentially a desert. I was planning on going to San Diego this weekend. But there's now a Category 4 hurricane headed towards, and they're saying, don't be on the roads in San Diego, because there's going to be massive flooding and flash floods. So we're going to be dealing with that now over the next couple days right here in California. And then, I don't know if you saw in Germany, just like Frankfurt and Nuremberg turned into rivers. People are just, so that's just this week. And it's happening all the time now. So that's one. I think we all recognize now that we have a problem. That's the first step. Now, I'm going to skip over the second step. I'll come back to that. So I'm going to go to the third step. Step 3. And I write about this in the book too, because step 3 and step 4 are intricately connected. So step 3 is that 3 energy of coming up with great ideas to do stuff. And step 4 is like throwing, so step 3 is throwing spaghetti against the wall. Step 4 is seeing what sticks. So what emotionally we feel comfortable doing. So I'm going to just list some things from a step 3 perspective. And I know that as I list these things, you all are going to be having this step 4 emotional reaction to what I say. Totally fine, totally natural. So I break it down into 2 things that we need to do. And I'll start with your personal stuff. Because remember, what's the problem? The problem is we're putting carbon, or polluting the sky with carbon. So the solution is don't pollute the sky with carbon. It's pretty easy, right? So where do we pollute the sky with carbon? So most of our biggest things are transportation. So you can have, an EV, for instance, instead of a gas car. The other big contribution is your household, right? So you could replace all your gas-burning appliances with electric appliances. So heat pump water heaters, heat pump HVACs, induction stoves, electric ovens, all of that. Don't fly. Flying is actually, not only is it, gram for gram, the amount of fuel that you're burning and emitting CO2, but you're actually injecting it up into the atmosphere, and it's like 2.5 amplification effect by flying. So, I don't know why I picked this, but round trip trip to Japan, single person contribution, over 6,000 pounds of carbon that you're polluting the skies with. 6,000 pounds, right? It's more than your car. So, and then for the methane, your biggest contributor to methane is a diet with beef and dairy. That's where a lot of our methane comes from. So those are your personal things. How are your type 4 reactions to those? Then, there's none of us are going to be able to solve this just with our personal contributions. We also have to change things at a systemic level as well. And so, the things that you can do at a systemic level, I don't know if you heard, but a group of Montana youth climate activists just won this huge court case. And so you want to litigate and hold polluters accountable. And so find that litigation, support that litigation. Legislation, you want to support legislation that aims at lowering our carbon emissions, and that's both renewables, but also even your local building codes. Like in Palo Alto, we prohibited all new gas hookups to buildings. It's great, right? So there's all kinds of things you could do local, state, and national level. You can support politicians who are trying to promote good climate policies. So you can elect them, and you also have to hold them accountable once they get into office. You can't ever stop. You just got to keep pestering. And then you can join a climate group, because we need to build up political power that can stand up to the oil companies. When I was in Washington, D.C., I went to Anna Eshu's office. She's my representative. And I was furious at the time that President Obama wasn't denying the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. And Anna Eshu said, nothing happens in this town without the permission of the fossil fuel industry. So how do we stand up to that? We have to be bigger than that. We have to stand up. We have to collectively amass enough power to be able to stand up to that. So those are things that we could do at a systemic level. And, and it's good to do both, right? Do some in your personal, work some systemic, and try to do it when you're doing this. Try to do it in a community, a supportive community, because it's tough to do. It is. It's emotionally tough, and it's just a lot of self-sacrifice too that you have to do. So you need a supporting community. So that gets back to 2. I skipped over 2. So when there's a problem, if you are actually going to want to solve the problem, you have to have an emotional connection with the problem. You have to actually care to solve the problem. And that's that emotional connection of the 2. So that is the step 2 in this. And I can tell you, thinking about this now for 2 years, working on climate will be the most altruistic thing you ever do. Because there's, it's all just giving to other people, other life, other species. It is literally the most altruistic thing I can think of doing. And then, the question is, can we do that? Will we care enough to actually save all we can? So, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Matt. And if you is there a separate mailing group? So if you're interested in send me an email and I'll connect you to Matt if you want to get on his email list. But also he writes a weekly update, and you can find the weekly update on the website for the Spiritual Life Foundation as well. So he sends that to me, and I populate that every week. So that's the little bit that I do. So Okay.